Okay. Well, I'm Boyd Peterson, and I have James Carroll with me today, and we're going to be getting started with this presentation. Hopefully everybody is excited to hear about how to use SEO and how to best make it yours for your business. You know, a lot of people right now have a lot of time on their hands, and so it's important that if you have time on your hands and you'd like to do it, well, here is a great way of finding out how to do it. Now, I've asked Jim, my good friend Jim Carroll, who is an SEO expert, and he has been doing this for quite a few years, but I asked him to share with everyone what the his checklist for how he goes through and works with people. So when he's doing SEO for someone, he has a checklist that he goes through to make sure that everything is doing what it needs to be done. And so I've asked him to share a bit on that. You're going to get that checklist, and then he's also going to be going through it. However, SEO, you're never going to get through it in 1 hour. So, and we're going to keep these classes to 1 hour. So we're going to be doing them in several sessions, and you can come and watch for free. So we're glad that you're here, and we're going to, now I'm also going to turn everybody's on so you can actually unmute yourself and ask questions if you'd like to. So be sure to do that if you feel like it. If you don't want to, or there's some noise going on in your background, please mute yourself, or I will mute you. And then if I mute you, sometimes you can't get unmuted yourself. So anyway, I'm going to first tell you that Jim Carroll, he is an expert on SEO. He has been doing this a number of years. I've said both of those things in a while. But one of the things that I love about him is, you know, in his personal life, he's a daredevil. And he'll probably tell you about that. If he doesn't, you'll have to ask him about that sometime. But he's a daredevil. But that also goes along with working with SEO. And so when you're using SEO and doing SEO, he gets in there and he tries things that he sometimes shouldn't. Other times he pushes the limits to see what he can do without doing black hat type SEO, which you don't want to be doing. So I'm going to turn the time over to my very good friend James, or Jim, whichever way you want to call him. As I mentioned to everyone who just joined us, I have turned it on so that you can unmute yourself and ask questions during the session. So please do so. And Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Boyd. I'm going to go ahead and start my slideshow here. So go back up here and okay. So thank you, Boyd, for the great introduction. My name's Jim Carroll. I own a company called E2 Total Solutions. We're primarily a search engine optimization firm, and we're going to talk about optimization. Boyd and I work, we collaborate on a lot of different projects. And we were basically at Athena Coffee, having a coffee a while back. And we started with this idea of having a checklist, because he was asking me, well, how do you do this? You know, what do you go through? And so there's a checklist that I do use. And so we've decided to give this for free. And we're going to go through it in a series of 6 different seminars, all of them about 1 hour. I'm going to tell you that you'll never learn everything that you need to know. And a couple of these slides, the slides in particular that show the checklist, we'll give those out as needed, or we can email those to you. But if you watch all of the seminars in a series, of course, you will have the entire list of about 70 different checklist items that we use in my company. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me, and it's not even, oh yes it is. So in total disclosure, I want to tell you that I own a company called E2 Total Solutions. I collaborate with Boyd on a couple of different projects. We also, Boyd and I own a website called SEO in 360. I want to give that a plug right here at the beginning. And this is not an advertisement, that particular website. That website is designed, you can go there and for a very affordable price, like $9 or $15, buy applications or buy books or buy programs that help you do put yourself search engine optimization. The whole website is all about optimization, and we're constantly loading new products in there. There's maybe 50 or 60 products in there right now that you can go to. We're going to talk about them through the course of this series, and we'll talk about link building. Well, there's a book that you can buy for 20 bucks or whatever it is, and you actually, it'll tell you how to go acquire links, and you can do this stuff yourself. It's not an affordable or an expensive process, excuse me. And I want all of you guys to be able to do it yourselves. And if you get stuck, then certainly you can rely on an expert like myself or somebody, but by all means, don't feel overwhelmed by the process. The other products that we have, of course, are Reputation Revolution, which is a social media product that helps you defend your reputation or online reputation specifically for social media. Bank Code is a sales tool that we provide. And at the end, I'm going to ask you guys to go to Facebook and leave me a review. So moving right along, my name's Jim Carroll. I'm CEO of a company called E2 Total Solutions. We're a full service search engine optimization and marketing firm. So anything that you need, we probably have done it once before. As Boyd mentioned, I've been in the internet game for well over 20 years. I've owned the optimization company for about 13 years. For 7 years prior to that, I owned a web hosting company, so I owned was a hosting provider. And before that, I actually started a web development company. The web development company and hosting provider, I sold both of those, and now I run SEO full-time for E2 Total Solutions. So a couple things that you might want to know about me. Boyd was accusing me of being a daredevil of sorts. And these are a couple of things that I may have done in my life. Just after college, I moved to Hawaii and lived there for 3 years. I'm adventurous in the sense that I've been on 2 different total solar eclipses. I competed in a national event, or a North American national event called Paraski. I was first place in my division. It's where you skydive on one day for accuracy and then ski race on the next. A bear is a picture of a bear that's walking into my garage. And so I've lived in the woods for years, and bears sometimes wander into my garage looking for food. Scuba pitcher, I'm a dive master and equipment specialist, and a rescue diver, I should say. I've been known to dive with sharks. And the last thing, it relates to Buddhism. I am not a practicing Buddhist, but I adhere to a Buddhist, more of a Buddhist philosophy than any other type of philosophy. So, moving right along, Boyd and I were sitting having coffee, and we started to come up with this idea. Let's create a checklist. Let's make this affordable. Let's make this easy for people to do their own SEO. That was a culmination that literally goes back maybe a year or more. And that's kind of was the brainchild for the company, or the website, SEO in 360. Here was how I kind of started my search for this actual, putting this PowerPoint together. I was telling Boyd just before the, we turned on the seminar, that I actually started this at 10 o'clock last night. And Boyd, knowing me the way that he does, complimented me and said, gee, you got such an early start on this one. So Boyd knows me well enough to know that I usually throw these things together at the beginning. So the first thing that I wanted to show you guys is a slide that says, what is SEO? And for those of you that don't know, that's a buzzword that flies around a lot. And it's an acronym, of course, for search engine optimization. So what is that exactly? We're going to dive into that just a little bit more before we get to the list itself. I want to give you guys some perspective on what it is, how long it's been around, how it all kind of started. The first website was actually launched in 1991 The first public website, there was some intranet sites available prior to that, but the first one was really in 1991. And in 1997 was when the term SEO was actually coined. And it was either early 1997, in February, there was a guy that wants to take credit for it. He worked for an advertising agency. But everybody that is giving credit for it, it gives it to the band manager, Jefferson Airplane. I don't know how many of you guys remember that band. The band manager for Jefferson Airplane was very frustrated. He thought they should be at the top of the first page, and he was really, really frustrated that they were languishing on the bottom of the fourth page. So he went and approached some people and said, how do I optimize this website? How do I get my website to the top of the first page? And back then, I want to put something in perspective for you. Google was not really a dominant force. The dominant force at that time was MSN. MSN was actually using a product from Google. It was called, referred to as Backrub. And so they were playing with the algorithm that Google ultimately used to become such a dominant powerhouse. Back then, Google wasn't a player, MSN was. Jefferson Starship was basically the company or the organization that wanted to rank better. So on this slide, most of you people that are keenly interested in search engine optimization are going to want to pay particular attention to this. Today, we don't go into this very, very deeply. It's broken into three categories. And I want you to stick these categories in your mind. The on-site part of the optimization includes all of the stuff that happens on the page, all of the stuff that happens behind the site, the coding happens behind the site. You know, there's things that are important. They all have different levels of value. H1 tags, the alt tags, the meta descriptions, blogging. I think there's somebody online today, and she and I had a conversation earlier today, that blogging is horrifically important to help Google understand what the website is about. It's all that information that you can put into your website that will help Google understand what you do. And if you put in too little information in some instances, then Google doesn't understand, and they refuse to actually crawl that page. We put traps on all of our sites, and we can see how often the spiders come and how often they crawl them. If we don't have enough information, Google actually won't crawl that page. There's something called link building that's a real passion of mine. You'll hear me talk about that at length, and it's basically the primary core of what Google was founded on was backlinking, or creating backlinks, valuable backlinks. And today those backlinks actually go 3 steps deep. So it's more than just, you know, who links to your website, but Google cares about who links to that link to your website. So those things are all important. So think about that. Google's looking 3 generations deep on the linking capacity of a website. So it matters who you link to or who links back to you. Social media has become a big part of my puzzle. When I started doing optimization, it really was just a college fad. It wasn't really a dominant powerhouse like it is today. And today it's a full 1/3 of my puzzle. So when you look at that, consider, do you have a Facebook account? Should you? Well, they're such a dominant force, you probably should. And then I start to look at the other, primary drivers there. Do your clients live on Instagram, or do they live on Pinterest? Are they in LinkedIn or on YouTube? All of those are really, really relevant. So this is something to kind of burn into your brain. This is what makes great or awesome optimization. So Google's something that I'm going to refer to a great deal. I don't want to give you too much history about Google. Obviously, they were registered in 1991. In 1995 is when they actually started their Backrub program. That's what MSN was using at the time. But they're worth several billion, $100 billion, I should say, about $300 billion is what they're valued at. But that graphic is really telling because there's code behind it. You can actually see that it's a mathematical machine. I want you to think about what Google states as their primary core. This is their mission statement that exists on their wall in their facility in California. It says, our mission is to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So they don't say we want to organize some of the information. They're saying they want to organize all of the world's information. And there's about a new website launched probably just less than every second of the entire day, 24 hours a day. Every second there's a new website that's launched. And so Google has to find those websites, understand the purpose of that website, and then rank them in an index of websites that they have. They're actually managing two indexes these days. One of them is the mobile index, and one of them is the desktop index. So there are two different indexes, and you can rank differently based on how your site performs or the speed that it loads at. All of these things are factors that we're ultimately going to talk about. So I did a little, as I was putting this PowerPoint together last night, did a scan, and what I searched for, the search was, what are the most popular websites in the world? So obviously, Google, of course, pulled up some different graphics for me. And Google, this graphic, I really like it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Google owns basically the first and second positions. Google by itself is a website, and YouTube, of course, is a website. You can see that their positions 1 and 2. Facebook is number 3. So Facebook, of course, is a website. It's becoming more of a search engine as well. People are actually using Facebook as a search engine, which is kind of a scary thing. At least Google, regardless of your political views, they may be slanted one way or another. Facebook just says outright that they're not a news organization. They're just put stuff up there. Anybody can put stuff up there. And then if they search for it and they have the appropriate keywords or the appropriate hashtags, you can find stuff on Facebook that's fiction. I mean, I don't know what other word to put with it. Then there's some other, I don't even want to get into that, but some other stuff that happens here. You can see that Bing is a big one. And I'm going to screw up the name. Boyd can probably tell me. Baidu is the other one. And that's Chinese, of course. Yandex is one. Yahoo and Bing are both there. Ask is certainly one. I was surprised the graphic came up. DuckDuckGo, which is kind of a local search engine, that actually ranked pretty high when I was pulling all this stuff together. So at any rate, these were the most popular sites in the country, and I just wanted you to be aware of them. So when we're starting to talk about optimization, I want to encourage you people to actually have a plan. Hopefully after watching a couple of these 1-hour sessions in this series, you're going to start to formulate a plan in your mind. And I'm going to tell you right now that the plan will change. And Google is responsible for making us change. Boyd alluded to the fact that I frequently test Google. I have a couple of colleagues around the country, and we're always testing Google. We're inventing ways to test Google, and we'll do something to 2 different sites in 2 different parts of the country and see how Google reacts to it. We're trying to find the best way to optimize websites and make it better for you. This particular slide, I have a fascination with it. It's the Winchester Mansion down in California. And, you can read the specs there. I'm not going to read them to you, but, it's 24,000 square feet, and there's rooms that have no entrance or exit or windows. There's stairways that go up into the ceiling. There's, it's just a menagerie of a mess. And, there's real stuff that happened in the background. The woman that was the widow of the Winchester fortune thought that it scared away all the ghosts of all the guns that her family was responsible for killing the people. So at any rate, she thought all the noise would keep them away, and it's a fascinating little story. It is a story at this point. What's important is that you understand you do have to have a plan before you embark on any journey. Google itself is horrifically invested in 2 things that I want to point out to you. One of them is machine learning, the other is artificial intelligence, and the other is quantum computing. Quantum computing is basically a 3-dimensional computer code, is the best way to think of that. And on November 6th of this last year, Google ran a test on with the quantum computer, and what the math problem that they figured a binary computer would have taken about 10,000 years to resolve or come up with an answer to that question. Their computer came up with the answer in about 200 seconds. That's how fast computing is evolving. And we could run off into topics about the singularity and all the other stuff that's fascinating to me. But be very much aware that machines are learning, artificial intelligence is developing, quantum computing is real, and it exists today. And whoever owns the quantum computers are going to control the world. When you control all the data, you really will control all of the world. So this particular slide is a representation of how vested Google is into that. And I want to emphasize that they plan ahead and plan to stay relevant all of the time. But Google is a force. Google, the reason I mentioned them so much in the beginning of this is because the only thing we optimize for, the only company we optimize for is Google. All of the other search engines will fall in line if I optimize properly for Google. So Google controls about 93% of all the searches in the world. It's about 63,000 searches a second from all over the world. And that's millions and millions a day and billions a year. The only person, the only client that I really think of as far as having to satisfy is Google. If I satisfy Google, my clients will then be satisfied. So I'm working every day to satisfy the crazy things that Google comes up with. So black hat versus white hat optimization is the next thing that I start to worry about. And a good description of this, black hat is when you do nefarious things. A nefarious thing would be if you duplicate content or keyword stuff. Keyword stuffing, people always say, what is that? You put too many keywords in your text. Well, it actually gets much, much deeper than that. People have been known to, on a white background, put keywords embedded in the white background in white. But what that means is when the spiders crawl on the site and see in the page, they'll find that white text on the white background, even though the casual viewer cannot see it. Spiders will actually see it. It's actually in the code, and the spiders are crawling the code. They're not looking at it visually. But what will happen is the spider will start to pick that up, and then, of course, then it will be duplicated in the content, which you start to think is a good idea. Then once it realizes that it's coming from the background in a white-on-white image versus what's happening in the black, text images, Google will find you, and they absolutely will punish you. You can see that I've got to put up a handcuffs there on the bottom. Google will find you, and they will punish you. I can tell you several stories about algorithm updates that have punished people. One of the most famous ones is when they did their Panda update, I believe, and it crushed JCPenney's. JCPenney's with cross-linking all of their products to create more value. So they had pillowcases, cross-linked Levi's jeans, and the algorithm, when their automatic update, it crushed them. You couldn't even find them in the first 400 or 500 websites. So Google ended up helping them fix it, and they doing things that were underhanded, and then they started to rank again. So white hat is what we really shoot for. That's what we want to do. Instead of having duplicate content on multiple locations, and I'm just going to say, never, absolutely never should you cut and paste. Everything you write should be original content. And so in the white hat technique scenario, we want relevant content. We want well-labeled images. And Google can see images. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years about whether they can see them or not. But the best example would be if you go and search for the particular dog I have a passion for is a Norwegian elk hound. If you search for an elk hound, it'll show a bunch of pictures of elk hounds. If you search for elk hound puppies, then it will show puppies. So you then start to look at all of the alt descriptions on all those images. We actually ran a test where we had 100 images of puppies, quite frankly, is what we tested. And then we checked all of the images against the alt tags. So the alt description is an image description tag. And what we found is that only about 10% of those images actually had puppy or elk hound puppy the alt description. Well, Google, therefore, can see if they rendered out of 100 images, only 10 of them had alt descriptions. The other 90, Google had to have seen that photo and know that was an actual photo of an elk-hound puppy. So that's, you guys can run that test on your own, but search for something and it will come up with the appropriate alt descriptions. So moving on real quick. We want to have good grammar in all of our sentences. We want to have good sentence structure. We want to be well organized. We need to have appropriate HTML and unique and relevant titles on all of our pages. I put that other graphic in there with all the robots just to emphasize the fact that Google is in fact a robot. There's not a pile of people sitting there looking at your content or reading your website. The reason that the rules are so hard and fast with Google because you put a parameter, a rule inside of a search program or inside of a spider is a good way to think of it. And then if you violate that rule, there's a punishment attached to it. They never just give you a pass. It's either reward or punishment, pain or punishment. Google is going to find you if you try and cheat them and treat you accordingly or punish you accordingly. So you kind of have to ask yourself, what is the job of a search engine? And the search engine is to keep it fresh. This is a nice refreshing slide, a nice hot, or nice refreshing pool. And that's the whole point of a search engine. And Google takes their job very, very seriously. If you found exactly the same websites every single time you searched, then the internet would become boring and you wouldn't go back there anymore. But Google does these little tweaks. And that's what makes sites move around on the first page, moves them from the first page to the second page. So search engine optimization is an ongoing process. Never finish it. You can get it good where you're on the first page and you stay there for years or whatever. I've got a client that's been there for 4 years, and we keep pacing, the algorithm because it keeps changing. And there's mini algorithm changes and major algorithm changes. The mini ones happen as often as 5 to 7 times a day. That's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They're updating their algorithm just to give those little tweaks and move things around. They have something called a core update or a primary update. This just happened in the middle of May, last month, 2 months ago, excuse me. And it was called the Web Vitals update, and it had to do with load speed. They want websites to load faster. Interactivity, is the website visually stable? Is it mobile friendly? Does it have an HTTPS? And no pop-ups. That was a major change for them, to have no pop-ups. If you have anything on your website that pops up that says, hey, sign up for my newsletter, or hey, I need to send you information or buy my book or whatever it says, that basically puts a barrier between you or the surfer and the content that they were requesting. But Google now is starting to crush websites that have these pop-ups. You can have them maybe on secondary pages. We're still trying to sort that out because this is a new update. And we're trying to figure out, where we can have them, because we want people to sign up for our newsletters, or we want people to give us our emails so that we can stay engaged with them from a marketing perspective. But Google's not happy with it. So that's what's going on with them. So I did a search last night for lists. This is a list, I think a search for SEO checklist. And this is what came up. I think there was a little over 16 million results on my search for checklists. So I was just curious. I wanted to see what was out there and available. You can see that there's plenty to choose from. Everybody has a different opinion. Most of these are marketing companies and optimization companies and a variety of other things. There's a couple of do-it-yourself companies, very similar to what we're promoting today. Be aware that there's a lot of options out there, 16 million of them. So that was a little bit mind-numbing. So we, meaning Boyd and I, thinking this, there's about 200 SEO signals that we concern ourselves with on a fairly regular basis. And those I narrowed down to about 70 signals. Those signals we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. There's going to be 6 classes, I guess, and I'll cover about 12 each class, so we should easily get all 70 of them covered. And most of them are in a reasonable order, but not any particular order. Some of them have a high value, some of them have a lower value. And if you need to understand that a little bit more, we can talk about that, or pop in and ask a question. I think Boyd's monitoring the questions and answers tab as well if you don't want to unmute yourself and speak up. So when I started thinking about this, and generally when I put a presentation together like this, I think about it for some time, and I've actually been thinking about this presentation since Boyd and I first met and kind of developed the concept a couple of months ago. But it's difficult to start to just say, oh, here's a list of SEO stuff. And you have to consider business rules first. Some of you that know my background know that I was a SCORE mentor. SCORE is a small business administration counselor, basically. And so for about 10, 12 years, I was a SCORE mentor, and I helped people start businesses and worried about their websites. I was kind of the website and SEO expert that they had at the local branch here in Salt Lake. And so I started thinking about it and thought, you can't just say, let's just optimize my website. You have to do some market research first and start to understand, is there actually a place in the world for this website? The one that I would point to is I've got a couple of friends right now that are trying to sell masks. And I mean face masks, of course. And some of them have the N95s, and some of them are just selling masks. They're, having made in China or whatever. And they're all really struggling. And it's because they didn't do their market research. They just made a contact in China and said, can you make me some masks? And okay, I'll go sell 1 million of them. Well, quite honestly, none of them have sold 1 million of them. It's just because they didn't do their research, didn't do their niche research. They didn't understand their competition. Who's their competition? Well, their competition is actually the manufacturer of the mask. When I was a SCORE mentor, I used to really become quite amused with the competition question, because I would ask them, hey, do you have any competition? And they would think, well, I'm starting a new restaurant, and I'm the only guy in like 100 miles has an authentic German restaurant. They perceived that they had no competition because they were just the only German restaurant. Well, in reality, the Taco Time right across the street was their competition, or the Italian place a block away was their competition. So they looked at things with blinders on, did not understand the competition or the competitive level that they were having to draw clients in from. Keyword research is instrumental, not only to a business model, to your optimization. I've got some keyword research that we're doing for a company right now, and rarely do I get surprised. This one's been fascinating for me to start with her model, and it's taken me places that are just unusual. And we do keyword research on a variety of levels. Primarily, we're looking for words that are worth fighting for. Many of you might have heard my speech about long tail keywords. And if you search for the word Mustang, it gets 2 million searches a month. If you were to search for 1968 Ford convertible Mustang, then it gets only 600 searches. So somewhere on that long tail or that long curve of keywords, there's a sweet spot. That sweet spot's going to be about 50 to 100,000 searches a month. That's a word that we can actually fight for and win the competition for. And generally speaking, further down that long curve you go, that's where the money is. You're never going to win the battle for the word Mustang, 1968 Ford convertible Mustang. I guarantee if you have 1968 Ford convertible Mustang, I can sell it because there's only 600 people searching for it. One of those people is going to buy it. So how you set up your keyword structure and worry about that. Those are all really important problems. The master tools we're going to get into quite a bit, and how you gather that information or get those details is going to be really important. So the next slide is the slide that all of you guys have been waiting for. It's the first 12 steps that I came up with. on how to do your own search engine optimization. And I'm going to go through them, and then we're going to talk about a couple of them kind of individually. The first thing is terminology that we use in SEO is kind of foreign to a lot of people. And you need to really understand the basics of what the terminology is. We speak in acronyms, we speak half in acronyms and half in computer speak. And it's confusing to a lot of people. It's scary to a lot of people, and it really shouldn't be. This is something you can do yourself and can do affordably. The second thing that I'd encourage people to do, set up yourself inside the Google Search console. That used to be called Webmaster Tools. Don't be misled by that. You do not have to be a webmaster to set yourself up inside the Google Search console. Most of my clients, by the time they even get to me, probably have set themselves up and then just allow me access to it because they've already started to collect data. Next one I really struggled with, item number 3, was set yourself up in Bing Webmaster Tools. I'm not a fan of Bing or Yahoo. In fact, I kind of despise both of them. But when I was doing some research, I discovered that Bing is the number 2 search engine. So, I was telling you that Facebook is thinking of themselves as a search engine. People are misusing Facebook actually as a search engine. If you go as straight up search engines, Bing is number 2, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, and I don't like it. It's factual, so I'm just giving you guys the facts. The fourth thing is set up yourself up in Google Analytics. There's about 1,000 reports that you can pull out of analytics. We're going to look at one of them in just a second. You cannot properly market yourself, market your website, if you do not understand the information that comes out of Google Analytics. Google will tell you the time of day that people are hitting your website, the demographic that's hitting your website. Are they young? Are they old? Do they like sports? Or are they docile? Do they sit on their computer all day? Who's the demographic? What time of day are they hitting? What browser are they using? What if you optimize your website for a very specific browser and get more clients? Wouldn't that be valuable information? That's the stuff that Google Analytics tells you. Check for Google penalties. There's a variety of places that you can find penalties, certainly inside of the Webmaster Tools. Certainly you can go to some place like the Page Speed Insights or Page Speed Test Insights. You can check for things on, this isn't a penalty so much, but when you're doing your research, you should go to Google Trends and make sure that people are actually looking for the keywords that you're embedding. Make sure that they're there. Use friendly URLs. Most of you guys that registered for this class, you went to bpmedia.com/seminars. So think how user-friendly that URL is. It was set up correctly in the sense that it's BP Media, who's one of the sponsors, so bpmedia.com, and then /seminars. It's totally relevant and totally friendly. You don't want to use a long list of obscure numbers or anything like that to actually have your URL. Make them user-friendly. Item number 7 is you must install an SSL certificate. This would be at the top of my list of things to tell people to do. If you do not have an SSL certificate, you will not render in an organic search. Google has come right out and said, we will not display websites that do not have an SSL certificate. So get that on your website and get it on there quickly, because the sooner you do, the sooner that you can get into that pile of indexed sites. You can check coverage reports from the Search Console. Again, there's all kinds of reports that you can get there. That's, picking up at least 2 of my top 12. Optimize your robotext files. That helps Google find your website and find all of the pages on your website. Some websites I scan, and when I scan them, I'm thinking of 2 recently that I did, there were over 500 pages. And the people that own the websites had no idea. They said, oh, we might have 60 or 80 pages. When I scanned them, it came back with a report to me saying there's 500 pages on this website. So, make sure that your robotext file is functioning and optimized and doing correctly. Check for your visibility settings. That's very, very important that Google's able to see and find all of them. Number 11 is kind of a peeve of mine is set the comments to no follow. So a lot of people like to guest post, and you'll get comments like, hey, you've got a great website, I'd like to do a guest post. What they do is they guest post, and then they create a link to their own website inside the guest post. They might say, so-and-so that offers health food, that's really, really cool, it's great food, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you go to, mechanics.com, has nothing to do with the healthy nutrition that they were blogging about, but what they've done is they've embedded inside of your comments a link to themselves. That just is a pet peeve of mine. It really pisses me off. So please set your comments to a no follow. So any link that's embedded in there, if you allow guest posting, then that won't be taking away your linking juju. Linking is so horrifically important. We don't want to lose any juju in that. And then number 12 is your menu and site structure. That's one of the things that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. So this is an example of inside of the Google Analytics account. And this is an actual account of mine. It was from June 1st to June 17th this year. They had about 20,000 visitors, 19,666 visitors in that time frame. You can start to see a couple of things that are pretty important in here. How many pages they actually visited. It's the average number of pages that they visited. You can see how much time they spent on the site. You can see the number of sessions or return visits that they actually had to have. And you can also see up in here times of day that they actually visited. This particular graph is an hourly graph, so it shows in the middle of the night, very few people visit this site. In the peak parts of the day, a lot of people visit the site. Then there's additional information about languages and all kinds of other stuff. You can just kind of peruse over here and look about demographics and interests and where they were in the world. This is a great program. You must use Google Analytics. It's one of the very first things that we deploy for all of our optimization clients so that we can start to harvest information and pass that along appropriately. So make this very, very high on your list of things to do. The other thing that I want to talk about is website structure. And a lot of people don't know what I mean when I talk about this, but here's two graphics that are pretty compelling. So in this first graphic, there's no linking from maybe the home page, let's call this the home page, and then to the secondary pages. So the secondary page should probably link with another page or to any of these pages. So if Google is trying to crawl this and index every page on the website, none of these things that are happening up here, or none of these links, if there's not a link from one page to another, if your robo-text file or your sitemap is not functioning properly, Google gets lost. And the only way for Google to find every one of these is to actually stumble upon it. If you have an appropriate site structure, and this would be the home page, and every one of these is linked to that home page or goes off of that home page, it's a much more efficient circular type of sitemap. This is the type of sitemap that generally I prefer, and you can see that there's a home page. Each of these would be tabs inside of that page, and then you can go down accordingly. You can make this even function better if this is a mechanic site, let's say, and this is wheels and axles, and this is brakes. You might actually have these two pages linked to one another, so you can create an additional link back and forth between these two pages, wheels and axles and braking systems. So you can see that site structure is horrifically important, and it's a core thing that we want to accomplish or achieve inside of our optimization. The next thing that I want to point out is that Google, again, and I hate to keep going back to them, but they're really the only game of the town. They control 93% of all the searches done in the world every day. They have products for every letter of the alphabet, with the exception of the letter J. And that's the only one that they don't actually have something for. So moving right along, I'm going to tell you that I mentioned before, the SEO is a rodeo, and there's either reward or punishment. There's pain or pleasure. There's nothing in between. If it's just an unemotional robot, a spider that's crawling your website and making decisions on, oh, gee, the keyword density is 1% too high. The difference between 1% too high and 10% too high is unintelligible to a spider. It's over the limit that they code into that spider. So it will punish you accordingly. I told you before that I was having a conversation with somebody about keywords, and we were talking about keyword density. The actual keyword density is 3% or higher, they will punish you for. So you need to write to a density of about 2.9%. 2.9% is very, very difficult to achieve. I personally write my own blogs, and mine are about 2.7, 2.8. I've been doing it for 13 years. I instruct my copywriters when I give them an assignment, only write to about 2.5, 2.4, or 2.5% density, because that's attainable for the average writer. So about Google, a little bit more about them. A revered expert in search engine optimization, and a good friend of mine, says that we may not always, as programmers, we may not always agree with their tactics or their methods or the outcome. Google is very, very predictable. And that's an important statement. Google is predictable because they always look at it from the user's point of view. So they will always do the right thing for the end user and make the site accurate and truthful in its valuations. So Google cares about how the end user sees it, not how programmers or copywriters or anybody else sees it. Google always does the right thing for them. Inside of search engine optimization, there's no silver bullets or shortcuts. Don't expect things to happen magically. Don't expect for things to happen immediately. Google takes a long time to digest information. I've been working with a company out of Switzerland for since I was first became engaged with them in February, and we have come from a valuation this week. I noticed we ran our reports, and they were valued at about 6.06. They were at a 0.2 before, and so now we're at 0.6. So on a scale from 0 to 100, so we've come up, 55 points or 58 points in a couple of months. It happens gradually, and it's been an ebb and a flow. We've gained a couple of points and then dropped a couple of points, and then made some changes, and we gained a couple more points and then dropped a couple of points. So it's always 3 steps forward and 1 step back, 3 steps forward and 1 step back. But don't expect it to happen instantly. If you deploy white hats for the long period of time, you will actually be successful. So we've come to the point in my presentation where I'm going to give away free stuff. So the free stuff that I'm going to give you guys today is you guys get a free speed check of your website. I told you guys early on, speed is a very high marker, and you cannot rank well on certainly a mobile device if you don't have good speed. Google is actually doing things to manipulate the speed. If you're one of the top 10 sites in a given search criteria, they're actually preloading assets into your phone, so that when you go from the first position to the second position, those assets from that website are already preloaded based on the search criteria that you put into it. So page web speed is absolutely instrumental to making things happen. If you go to SEOin360.com, in your name and your website, then we will give you a free speed test. It's a free speed test of your website, and just put your information in there, and we will be in contact with you and get you that report. So that's all I've got. If there's any questions, now would be an appropriate time to throw them out there.
You can unmute yourselves if you'd like, or if you'd like to just send something into the chat or the Q&A, we'll ask it for you. So does anyone have any questions? Oh, by the way, on that free speed test that he's given you, it also gives you an evaluation of how you can use it and what things you need to do to increase your speed. It's not something that's going to say, oh, you need to do this, but doesn't tell you how. It actually will tell you how and what to do to create that a faster site for yourself. Any questions? Okay, well, we don't have questions.
Tell everybody to invite their friends for the next one. It'll be 2 weeks from today at the same time.
Now, one of the things that that Jim started off with was he talked about knowing your clients. This is one of the things that when I start with social media, I want to know who your perfect customers are as well. And so all of that is very important for SEO. It's important for your social media. It's important for a lot of reasons. Mike, I see you've got your hand up, so go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question. So go ahead. Michael? I can hear you, Michael.
Oh, he was just saying thank you.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. Well, with knowing your customer, knowing what their hot buttons are will help you put together a better SEO as well. That was the other thing I was going to mention. Because if you know your customers and you know what they're looking for and what their hot buttons are, that is, oh, Michael said, sorry, it kicked me out. Okay, so he wanted to know more about the pop-ups. Let us know what the pop-ups and when you find out. So
we are doing some experimentation with pop-ups. I'm pretty sure at this point they should be on secondary pages and not on the primary page, because if you search for anything, batteries, and then when you hit a battery page and the first thing that pops up is something requesting to join their mailing list, that's blocking the information that the user requested. Google's going to punish you for that. On a subsequent or secondary page, you can probably get away with it, but for now, I would just not put them on any home pages. Primary pages. Make sense?
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we appreciate you being. Oh, got one here from Tom Robson. He says, "Can you expand on SSL certificates? Are they easy to install, and what's the cost involved?"
It depends on your hosting environment. An SSL certificate is a secure socket layer. That's a little lock that you see up in the corner. If that's open, that means that the site's not secure. If you put any information like your email address or credit card information, it's open when it moves across the internet. Having that secure socket layer locks that information down or encrypts it. So cost, it depends on the hosting provider. If you're at GoDaddy, for example, I think they charge $19 a month for theirs. If you're at another hosting provider, I'm going to say Bluehost, I think they're $19 a year. If you're at somebody like SiteGround, which is where I have several of my servers, they're free. So it just depends on the hosting environment and how you want to manage it. So it's completely up to you. But it does need to be installed.
Connect them. Right? It's easy to connect them.
Oh, absolutely. It's super easy. It's usually a toggle switch. It's that simple. So you click the toggle on, yes, I want an SSL, boom, it's done.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming today, and please tell all your friends about it, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Don't miss Boyd's seminar this Thursday from 2 until 3 o'clock. He'll be talking about social media stuff, whatever that is.
It's something you don't have anything to do with, right?
Right.
Now I'm going to be talking about social media, and we're going to be talking about posting more than just simply educational things or promotional things, or it's going to be talking about creating a balance. And then we're also going to be talking about the big questions that people have when they're dealing with social media, like, gosh, I've posted the last, for the last 12 or 15 times. Now what am I supposed to write about? What am I supposed to post about? I'm going to talk about that and how we're going to use a calendar to help you make it easy to do. And so it's something you want to be at. It's, again, a free webinar. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday. If you want, you can go to...
Well, I'll bet you can go to bpmedia.com/seminars and find out all about it.
Yes, you can.
What a friendly URL.
Yes. So you can go there, and it takes you over to Eventbrite. And then from Eventbrite, it should send you a message saying, hey, also you need to be hooked up to Zoom, which is where we host all of these events. So thank you, everyone, and for attending. Any final words, Jim, before we leave?
One last word is I just want you guys to look at the background behind me. That's exactly what's going on in my brain all the time.
Collage of a mess.
Yeah, so there you go.
All right.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for showing up today. I appreciate it.
All right.